Good afternoon, everyone. Today we start our conference, Ground of Care and Control, which is dedicated to the exhibition in Soil Museum in St. Petersburg in the Ars Electronica. It is the exhibition which is dedicated to soil and takes part in two spaces. So the first one is Dokuchaev Soil Museum in St. Petersburg, and the second one is in Itmo University and Air Gallery of Itmo University. And my name is Anna Kaplan, and I am one of the curators of the exhibition. And today we will have artist talks from our artists who were creating their projects which are also dedicated to the soil and different perspectives and different ways to think of the soil and see the soil. And today our moderator is Alla Mitrofanova, who will moderate our conference today. So Alla, please.
Hello, everyone. And our talk became possible because of this exhibition, Ground on Care. And also we are surrounded with those kind of exhibitions, for example, Humus and Cosmos in Moscow, just finished Skin as interface. So it's kind of new neo-materialist ideology in art. And that's, I think, very positive feature. And our exhibition was established in the Museum of Soil. And I would like to say a few words about the concept of this museum. Concept was developed in the late 19th century by Vasily Dokuchaev, who was an advanced scientist. For example, he established ecology thinking. He researched some catastrophic situations in agriculture, for example, drought and dust storms. And his idea was that it's not because those catastrophic events happened, not because nature is so ugly, so dangerous, so irrational, but because people using overexploitation of nature. And with his pupils, he even did scientific example how nature could be renovated. They really planted forest lines and renovated groundwater system in one region. And he was supported by the best scientists of that time, for example, by Mendeleev, Sechenov, but mostly from mainstream theory of agriculture. He was considered as a mystic, and he played kind of marginal role in science. That's why he decided to establish a museum of soil. He fought for possibility to establish such museum for few decades, and his pupils established museum in 1904, and still be keeping this concept as an alternative school, which was in universities sometimes, in agricultural institutions sometimes, but mostly they were marginal. And they still fight during the more than 100 years. And now museum was very small, but now this museum became bigger and bigger, and it's not only scientific problem, this concept. it's became cultural problem. The museum surrounded by community of artists. Artists try to reinvent relationship with so-called material agencies. And it means in the main concept of artist, I see concept of Dokuchaev that ground is not that nature. So he divided ground and soil, understanding soil as a live creature. A live creature with agents, mineral, biological, cultural, human, and this is historically built treasure. That's why we are not above the soil, but we are inside, above the soil as a masters of nature. So we are inside connections between many material agencies. And also soil is kind of treasure, and we are responsible for that treasure. So как бы soil, soul here connected a bit. And what artists mostly do? They are trying to reinvent or to discover, to invent some new relationships and instrument of relationships, expand our traditional knowledge of Earth. So what kind of instruments? Instruments of touching relationships. Liliia, for example, is trying to develop sound relationships. So to discover Earth as a sound, because in sound culture we have a lot of different possibilities of communications, and it's possibly sound could be used in communication as material agencies. So now we have sound, touch, and neuroscience, and it is not anymore a scientific problem. It is a problem of changes of cultural codes, how we relate with materiality. And that's why it's called, in the philosophy, it's called new materialism. And this new materialism is very different from traditional materialism, when nature was done as a resource, which is already done as it is. And with transcendental tradition, where human subject is above or on the top of those relationships. And that's cultural problem, political problem, scientific problem, because to change cultural habits, it's a very difficult problem. So from this point, culture became very political, and probably it's even more difficult struggle for new cultural issues than struggle against political institutions. That's why we keep talking about soil, material agencies, about new cultural codes, and so on. And I would give the first talk to Liliia Akivenson, who is anthropologist, sound researcher, and sound artist. Liliia, please.
Yes, thank you, Alla. I am here, and now I'm going to talk a little bit not about my installation that placed in museum, but about my work as anthropologist. I worked with different narratives of people who, with their witnesses of a so-called hum of the earth, the hum, the voice of earth. And also in my research, I used two categories, also care, category of care, and category of control, that is named in the topic of our discussion. And now let me tell you more about it. First of all, I worked with the hum phenomena, or how it named in Russian, the hum of earth. And if you will work with some English or American texts, you will find such a category as worldwide hum. But in Russian narratives, you also can find that the hum is a kind of voice of earth, and it make possible communication between, it's a very specific communication between people and the ground, between people and the planet. And it's also talking about the hum. It also just people talk about it as low frequency sound, and they don't know for sure where exactly it comes from. You could not name the place of the hum. You just can be there in your home. You can walk just down the street or go to school with your school children, and suddenly something appears, something goes out of your audio control. You feel the hum. First, you even don't hear it, but you feel it with your body. It's very, it's a body experience. Lots of people talk about the hum as a body experience, and for the first time, and then it's also become audio. But maybe I should say something about just the context of the hum. I find some materials about the hum, the voice of earth, and it was real for people. Yes, it till 19th century, as far as I remember. But the most bright episode connected with the hum took place in 20th century, in 70s, in Bristol, and it was named Bristol hum. And it was the same named article in Sunday Mirror, when editors say that something make noise and we could not control it, and it's all over the Bristol, and scientists don't know what to do with the hum. And it was it was very popular material, and about 700 letters come to the editors all over the Bristol, and people said, yes, it happened with us, it's our daily experience, and we just feel the same. So this way, the hum of Bristol becomes of a kind of sightseeing. It becomes a marker of the place, and it was the first incident when the hum was discussed with such a mass in such mass media, and then I think that after Bristol incident, it was also bright episode in Kokomo, Indiana, and Windsor. It's a border between America and Canada, and these territories also started to rustle. And what is more interesting for me as an anthropologist, researcher, people started to listen that very strange sound. And of course, what was the first reaction to this strange hum? It was noise. But what should I say? That noise is some uncomfortable sound, yes, but it also our audio reality also combines different kind of noises. That noises can be just provided from, it can make our neighbors can make noise. Some technique on the street can make noise, but that strange sound that you could not control, yes, it goes out of your control, and it's your sudden experience. So people, their first reaction was just to find the source and to find that very place that made harm. But efforts of scientists to find that very place that made harm was just it doesn't make any result. They could not name their yes, it's this street and that very building. No, it was something like all over the earth. And so I think it's yes, I'll tell later about them. But yes, but scientists also registered the most popular frequency of the hum. It's 35 hertz, as far as I remember. All over the world, it's the most, and just you can imagine that very frequency, it's very low, and it's people who listen to the hum of Earth for the first time, they say that it's something like a plane goes really near you, and it's also, as I said, body experience. You feel that very frequency with your body, and it's just it seems that the harm goes just from everywhere. Yes, and I also want to share with you with resource I worked with. It's a kind of special map. You can find it on in the internet. The harm info. I'll send it to you later. But what is it? It's a kind of map that people made together all over the world. They make some special map, and they they mark all places. They just where they register the harm. And it looks very effective, I should say. And what is interesting that this map, it isn't made by scientists. It's made by people who have this radical experience and they don't know what to do with it. And but as for Russia, I think there is no sports. I think that I couldn't find there any Russia regions marked in that very map, and it is not very popular resource in Russia, but in other countries there are a lot of sports, and if you're interested in, you just can take a look. And what about Russia? I worked with a very strange community I find in VK, and it's named Gul Zemli, the voice of Earth, yeah, the hum of Earth. And it is not a map, but it's also narratives about the hum and what just to do with it. And people all over the country, it's women, men, children. It's also sometimes it's children who come there because their grandmas ask them just to post something, to post some narratives about the harm, about the voice of the earth. And I think it's becomes rather popular. In Russia, the topic of the voice of Earth becomes very popular in 90s. I think you can remember it was a lot of astonishing articles about works in Skolskaya Sverhglubokaya, when people worked with soil and go further and further, and it was a lot of strange materials in paper when suddenly very strange and scary voices of people who was imprisoned in hell. It was some of Christian mythology. So engineers worked with the soil and go so further, then they just come to hell. And it was a lot of some materials about voices from the hell that scientists just get with their works, with their experience. And after that, I think that narratives about voices of Earth becomes very popular in Russia. Not very, but I can find a lot of texts. And working with them, I just combine them in two groups. First, as I just marked it for myself for work, first is ecology theory of the harm. It comes. It stands on the point that it's a crisis of anthropocentric epoch, and people use too much resources and they don't think about the future. And the voice of Earth, that very low frequency vibration that you can feel and also hear, is a last chance for people just to think about their experience, about their way of life, and do something with it. It's their last chance, and it's very popular context. And also the next context, which is also very popular, is a context of Christianity, that that people have no chance. You can just forget and relax and don't do anything with it, because it's a Yerikon voice, and so you've got 10 days, guys, and everything goes very bad. Now you just can pray and take a look what will be with our planet. But it don't happen. But it's also some activists who say, oh, now we'll just die in 10 days. But no. So it's also very popular, and one of my favorite religious narrative, the context of narrative, is that the harm of Earth was widely registered into last year at Easter in Sheremetyevo, near Sheremetyevo airport. But it was not the voices of the planes. It also just can be there. Yes, it's a huge airport, and it's also, I think that low frequency sound is a marker of the place. But no, it was some special voices that was registered all over the Sheremetyevo. It's a large part of Moscow, and there was a lot of people who said, yes, we heard voices from the earth, goes from the earth to people. It was on the Easter night, and it was a very straight religious narrative about voice of earth. And it was really bright mythological thinking, as for me, that the context of the end of the world and anthropocenic crisis, and we just should think about what we do with nature. Yes, it combines and mixed, and so I should say that it's about thousands of the narrative in that very group Gul Zemli in VK. And it's just get bigger and bigger, and I just work with it. People try to register their harm with their technique, with their smartphones, but it's very hard because its frequency is so low that you should use some special technique, not your smartphone. Just and when we with Evgeny Savenko was working with the sound of our installation, we decided to make it more hearable, yes, for other people, not 35 hertz, but we also worked with the experience of the harm, and it's a kind of just noise. You could not do anything with it. You just can register but you could not control it. You could not make it louder, or you could not go to another room. Whenever you'll go, you'll hear it. And it's very interesting context for me as a researcher. I think my time is over, and I'll be glad to answer some questions if you have.
Yes, probably I have. In anthropology, as anthropologist, you study different people perception of harm, but also through anthropological perception, we could see that we are moving into expanded censorship. So traditional music is based on a reduction of noise. But contemporary music from Avramov, Chelsea composer, is moving into including of noise. And it means that there is a contradiction between people making kind of conspiracy stories about noise and composers and noise musicians, sound artists from other side. They are trying to develop new language of sound. And I know that you also collaborate with self-organized Institute of Noise or Institute of Harm.
Yes.
And as you think, it's possible, first question, why people without having cultural possibility to understand harm, why are they trying to make conspiracy? Because it's anthropological and probably psychoanalytic problem. If we don't know, we're afraid. And we respond with conspiracy. But maybe this problem could be decided through understanding, through invading sound artist mentality into popular culture.
Oh, it's a very interesting question, and it's also very interesting experience for me, because yes, I also just work as noise musician, and I listen to noise music for a lot of years, and I also see reaction of my relatives, for example, that it's not music, it's something that I could not understand, I could not control, and it's the other sound, and I don't know what to do with it. I could not enjoy it. I could not ignore it. I also got no cultural reaction for this very sound, because when I was a child, so my parents brought me to some philharmonic concerts, and I know how to listen that very music and how I just should perceive it. But there was no noise concerts, and I just have no frame of perception and interpretation of. No, it's I think it's very wide tendency. Yes, and I think that our daily audio reality really full of noises, different noises, but we can control them just using phones with our music we prefer. Yes, we don't want to listen to our neighbors, and we can use phones. We can go to street, and we also can use phone, not to belong to that very common soundscape. So I think people have a very straight tendency just to control their audio reality, and when something goes wrong, yes, the sound becomes a problem, and the territory of sound become very inconvenient for you. So it should people should make some new mechanism of adaptation to that very sound territory, and and sound art. I think it's one of ways to try to do this. For example, it can be some more convenient territory to adaptate to new sort of sound. I think so.
Thank you. There are many groups making sound landscapes, going around with contact microphones, and they are trying to develop our perception of surrounding through sound. And very often we could even recognize what kind of landscape is presented. And it's a very different perception from our traditional opticocentric perception. And so we have very different picture of reality through sound, which is probably not only different, but more expanded. And how you would use this sound research into soil understanding. Do you have any ideas how soil with a lot of chemical and biological and cultural process could be translated into sound language?
Oh, you know, we've got such an experience with my friend, and we just make music together. And it was also some works we made together. We just go to some park in Moscow and put some microphones down the earth. And we were sitting for an hour, for example, just trying to listen some very little sound come just from the soil, because we could not say, and it would not be right to say that soil is silent. No, but there is not so much bright audio events that we just, when we go down the city, we got a lot of sounds, and it's our routine that a lot of sound events, we just, we get it daily. But when we get phones and microphone down the soil, it's quite another context. You just need to sit and to wait. And it's very interesting because it's a radically different practice of listening. There is no, as I have said, there is no much events, but you should be very patient, sit and just wait. Yes, and I think that soil is a good teacher just to sit and listen, as for just practice of we had together. But I think it could be interesting to do with people who want to.
Thank you. If somebody has more questions. Okay, we could go to the second part. Yulia Vergazova and Nikolay Ulyanov, Project Soul Soil.
Yeah, thanks. Hello, everybody. And I can start. Nikolay, can you share your screen with our presentation, please? Nice. Thank you. Yeah, and I can start with a short introduction about the background of our approach and what fields of knowledge we glued together to construct our speculative narrative. And after that, Nikolay can continue. First and foremost, I want to mention that the word tier comes from the Latin word cura, and according to linguists, its etymology is associated with the name of mythological goddess Cura, who fashioned the first man from clay. And after that, another ancient god, Kronos, chose a name for this creature and called him Homo, or man, because the figure was created from soil or humus. Word care or cura in Latin has a double connotation, and on the one hand, it means the joy and satisfaction of caring for someone, and on the other hand, it means responsibilities and concerns. Recently, the understanding of caring has shifted towards a state to collective actions, which are aimed at the good of the society as a whole and expanding a field of collective practices of caring. And mostly it's some kind of caring about caring for the environment. But this was not always like that. For instance, I can mention here a well-known self-care approach embodied in wellness lifestyle. And sometimes it can take a form of some kind of a new religion for some people. It's a concept of a healthy lifestyle based on a combination of physical and mental health, proper nutrition, and giving up bad habits. At the same time, this self-care is a very old concept that emerged in the early centuries of the Common Era in Rome. And Romans developed the idea of Socrates and other Greek philosophers into the art of existence, and using terminology of Michel Foucault, it's called the culture of the self. For instance, Socrates also says that one should take care not of wealth, but of the soul. And or Epicletus defined the human being for taking care of himself, while other creatures find everything the body needs in form of ready-made. And this kind of self-care in ancient times included philosophy classes, self-reflection, limiting oneself in pleasures, and so on. Also, Michel Foucault called this Roman practice the intensification of the relationship to oneself and the development of internal ties with oneself. So joy should be contained within and not to be dependent on external factors and external conditions. Foucault said that our practices shape our everyday life. Nowadays, I guess this kind of approach can raise many questions. Are we caring for the world by taking care of ourselves, for instance, or can the development of self-care be about taking care not of oneself? And this also can be understood as an approach of object-oriented philosophy, which tries to introduce objects and nature into a circle of subjects and actors. The development of a new language around caring shifts to caring for the climate, caring for the earth, for others, or so it can be called like some kind of planetary caring right now. And here, Nikolay, can you please go to this Ugen? I can mention this mobile application Ugen as a good example of projects related to the critique and to rethinking of this wellness lifestyle. It's a curatorial project by Alexander Burenkov. Maybe I guess it's he is a famous curator. This word curatorial also has the same root with care. So this application, this Ugen app, is a growing collection of exercises and instructions of reconnecting with the nature and with yourself also. These instructions propose different models of thinking and feeling different arrangement of planetary coexistence. They also challenge the possibilities of instruction-based art and offers face-to-face encounters with non-human beings and feeling of planetarity. Nikolay, can you switch to this slide? For this application, we designed a set of instructions on how we could be more careful with surfaces. Our instructions are named down to the ground. In them, we propose various methods to facilitate the pleasure of soils through direct tactile interactions. For instance, you can make a DIY modification for the soles of your shoes by filling them with small stones to make the surface feel more natural for soil. And also it contained other similar instructions directed towards health improvement and caring attitude for surfaces and for different kind of soils and landscapes, natural landscapes. And in this approach, we are close to understanding the surface of the soil and the planet as a whole, as a living being, and it's a higher hypothesis. According to this idea, the Earth is a single living superorganism. This theory was developed by the climatologist James Lovelock and microbiologist Lynn Margulis. For instance, according to this hypothesis, the evolution of rocks and the evolution of life can be closely related and are not separate processes. Lovelock came to the idea that earthly life had learned somehow how to maintain the necessary conditions for existence for itself, having entered into some form of cooperation with the planet. In this case, the soil acts as the upper fertile layer of the surface of this superorganism, inhabited by collaborative communities like bacteria, fungi, plants, for instance, on which the existence of all other life forms on the planet depends. Gaia's theory is now reflected in some areas of scientific knowledge. For instance, metagenomics. It's a branch of molecular biology that studies the set of genes of all microorganisms in a certain environment, and it deals with the study of soil as a single organism. And thanks to experiments of metagenomics, a single genome of the soil superorganism was collected, and it contains a lot of genotypes of its constituent creatures. So in essence, it uses all the genotypic contents of the soil into a model of the very unified organism that Lovelock spoke of. And this idea, this approach also close to Vernadsky concept of noosphere. And here, I guess Nikolay can continue about soils, please.
Yes, hello. My name is Nikolay, and I would like to make some points about the recent findings on soils and how lively and vital they are, and how they are connected to technologies, to the technological thinking, and tell a little more about our project, about the technical side of our project, and how technology helps us to care more about the soil. As a disclaimer, I'm not a soil expert or a soil scientist, but nevertheless. And so in the past 10 years, in the field of soil science, there has been a paradigm shift in the question of what soil is, what it actually is and what it consists of. And so the historical view has been that soil consists of humus and humic macromolecules. So the idea was that humus is the long-lasting substance that, for example, carbon could be stored and stopped from going into the atmosphere. But the modern microscopes and imaging technologies has revealed that whatever the humus is, it's not it doesn't last long. And so, for example, the problem also was that like 15 years ago and before that, soil was mostly studied in the laboratories with chemical extraction, and people thought that people assumed that the result reflected what the soil organic matter is actually is. But nowadays, scientists can study soil directly, and what they found out is that the most one of the modern competing approaches to understanding of soil is called soil continuum model, and it offers a model of soil as a continuum of more or less decomposed materials. So it replaces the dichotomy of stable and unstable carbon with carbon in progressive stages of decomposition, like from intact plant material to highly oxidized carbon. And actually, so in this sense, soil becomes kind of a part and representative of queer ecology, kind of. Actually, the model is not so new. So Selman Waxman in 1936 already had similar ideas, but the Second World War changed his direction of research, and he moved to the antibiotics and helping soldiers. And the other problem was that scientists didn't have the right tools to study soil. And so, yeah, I mean, this is important because the better understanding of soil helps also to create better climate change models and for understanding how carbon sequestration works. So in this sense, soil works as some kind of museum and holder of carbon, a holder of fossil fuels. So this is another technology which I wanted to discuss. Another approach to how I understand the soil better is cyborg soils, and understanding who inhabits the soil and what is their communication. So the recent study by Paola, Michaela, Mafla, and Dara and her team, they created new kind of cyborg soil, which is half natural and half artificial. And it consists of micro-engineered chips that they bury in the wild, in the forests, or also in the lab. And so they wait for enough time for the microbial cities to emerge within the mud. And what they found out is that they found labyrinths of tiny highways, skyscrapers, bridges, rivers, which are navigated by microorganisms, by microbes, to find food, maybe to avoid becoming someone's next meal. And so in this picture, you see the fungal highways, which were before that only seen in the laboratory, but this kind of images are now produced in the wild. Also, a parallel research has been conducted by another group, and they used quantum dots technology. So they incorporated quantum dot material into the soil, so as not to also make it to not intoxicate it. And this quantum dot, it can luminesce, so it's luminescent, and one can see how these networks actually work. So this is actually not a static picture, it's a video, and one can see these very bright red dots, and they travel around. And what the team of just a moment. Yeah, so Toby Kears and her researchers, so they tried to question this Gaia hypothesis a little bit, tried to make it more they wanted to. So they turned to not the cooperation questions, but to the questions of competition for the resources, and they were inspired by Thomas Piketty's Capital in the 21st Century, which emphasizes the role of inequality. And they studied these inequality questions, but in the question of how resources are travel through these fungal highways. And so they found that fungi move nutrients from rich to poor regions, let's say, and they grow faster in the poor regions. So it's actually not so much of a competition. So I guess what they found out is a bit more complex picture of this. And so this type of researchers, they produce very interesting, dynamic, and vital images, create a nice perspective, and they add some emotional value to the soil underneath. So we could care more, and this type of approaches with cyborg soil, with quantum dots, it's more, let's say, penetrative approaches. And what our project explores is giving care to the surface of the soil. So it is related to the thing called mulching, to the process of mulching and the mulch. So the mulch, it's an additional artificial layer above the soil, which protects it from erosion and degradation, and to maintain a suitable microclimate. The mulch can be organic, it can be inorganic. and but it's kind of static. So we developed a speculative approach to this mulching technology. We offer technological expansion in the form of shoe soles, which should be wearable, caring. So these soles could become a part of the fashion industry, let's say for the farm workwear or for everyday shoes for city dwellers. So what we did is there is a database. We took the images from the forensic database of shoe soles, which is on the right on this picture, and we trained a neural network, StyleGAN 2 neural network. We used it to generate new forms of soles, and the images on the left are what is produced by this. So these are hallucinations, some kind of generated new images of soles. And what we also did is that we took the so the Dokuchaev Museum and they has kindly provided with the images of soil profiles, which you can see here on the left and in the middle. So this is some kind of vertical view of the soil. So it should be several meters high. And so we also trained another neural network, and we matched these soils to the soles and vice versa, and we produced this kind of speculative vision to which kind of shoe soles correspond to which kind of soils. And after that, we also interpreted these shoe soles as 3D models. So we can continuously go through these 2D images, and we produced the 3D versions of it, so that people could wear this kind of futuristic shoe soles and transfer their care and transfer the mulch, or maybe it will be itself as a mulching device. We use the software for MRI for which is used by medical healthcare. You can see it on the right here, and on the left is the to print this shoe soles. We used the Cura program, so it's also named as the Roman goddess. It analyzes the 3D prints for the errors, and so we got this final models in the end. So we hope with our project it will create an alternative approach to soil care, to the care of the surfaces, and burst the imagination of people further. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. This project is very popular among public. So there's a decision to make sculpture with soul. People immediately try to play with it. So it looks a bit like animal paws, and also they are very strange and visually attractive. So people try to understand how they could move with that. And even I heard question if it's possible to charge this soil with some positive elements which are necessary for the renovation of soil, how it could be used in strategy of soil renovation.
Who will answer? I guess this kind of service can also extended by feeling with mulcha. Nikolay mentioned this kind of protecting stuff. What do you think, Nikolay, about mulching processes using this?
So yeah, like one kind of idea that we had maybe, for example, we could so the mulch could be used. It could be they could work as communication devices. So they have pores inside of them, and maybe we could also disperse the magnetic kind of mulch, which is, I guess, used also in soil restoration, and people could be the couriers, let's say. So they could. I mean, it's a bit controversial, maybe, but they could become the logistical part of the soil healthcare system. So if you need to disperse the care, you could just like step somewhere, collect the mulch from one place and distribute to another place, and in parallel to the kind of communications that are going inside the soil. Yeah, and it's more on the speculative side, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have questions to each other? And also it looks like we have invasion in our discussion from atmosphere, because Sibylla Neumayer having a storm on the Northern Europe, and she cannot connect us. And so we could still keep discussion, and very pity that Sibyl is not able to present your presentation and your talk, because she is very much involved into politics of surviving in destructed territories. And she mentioned this famous book of Anna Sin about mushrooms and survival. And she is making ecological expeditions and trying to develop new images without distance. So rejecting traditional image of Earth and changing distance between Earth and our position. And changing this distance, we are going very close to the mineral, soil, plants, and we discover them from different points, from different perspectives. And that's very important how we measure our reality, because normally we measure it through distance between complete closed individuality and nature, which is outside. But when we change this distance, so we have another culture of relationships. And so, for example, Karen Barrett thinks that measuring our perceptions, our data, understanding and giving meaning to data in this microscopic perspective is the main cultural and scientific problem, because sense, we are getting a new sense of knowledge, new superposition. And so that's pity that we are not able to talk about that, but I hope we will still continue, and also probably we will connect in our local creative programs and people from different fields, and organize a series of seminars on neo-materialism, problems of measuring, problems of data, problems of algorithmization of data, because every time we start from nowhere without previous concept. And probably if we have 1 more minute, if we have some questions to each other, we could wait.
I think maybe I have one. So it's about Julia and Nikolay's project about soils. And can we use, for example, this theory of new materialism dedicated to this project? Because here we have subject and people and technologies which are trying to somehow help soil, and we have the subjectivity of artists who are trying to use technologies in a good way somehow.
Yes, I guess it's a relevant connection, and you can use this kind of optics. So yeah, I guess nowadays it's a very common approach to connect technologies and new theories like neo-materialism and so on. I guess it also could be interesting to us to go through this imaginary idea of how care practices could be extended on a daily basis, and how to trigger some real actions and approaches and real practices, and maybe to put it into production of this kind of items, these soils that can serve this purpose. So for me, it's also interested to test it maybe with people and make some new connections. So Nikolay, what do you think?
Yeah, I mostly agree. I also was thinking that the project maybe could help. Like, it also has problematizes the question of diversity of soils and soil designs. So we could study also this. We could connect the diversity in fashion, in fashion designs, with the different and various soils and maybe soil structures or soil architectures that we have on Earth. So that's what I was thinking.
Thank you.
So it looks like we already did all questions, and we could move far away to continue our job. Yeah. So thank you all participants for impact. We hope that soil studies in that radical democratic emancipation of everything, the Kuchaev started from that position. It was position of movement Narodniki. So radical emancipation of all human agents, workers, agricultural workers, and material agents. I think such a concept was only from such position of radical emancipation, and now in very strange reverse of history, we are moving in the same radical democracy. So we need to understand material agencies, but also body agency. And that's very different perspective from what we had before on the base of linguicentric theory or theory of subject, theory of consciousness, which is clear from materiality. And I hope using so strong wave from culture, from art, we will change cultural landscape quite soon, maybe in few decades. So I am an optimistic, and so probably we will have to say each other goodbye and thanks.
Thank you very much.
Very interesting discussion.
Thank you for the conversation.
So, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.